Hello, everyone, and welcome to the sixth episode of the Experience Talk. Today's episode will discuss about a topic that I'm always curious about. It's customer onboarding for High Touch SaaS. And we'll discussing its importance, best practices, involvement of a CSM, sales to customer success handoff, and a lot more. I'm Tanuj Diwan, Head of Product at SurveySensum, and I'm in conversation today with our special guest, Irit. Hi, Irit.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Irit is a Chief Customer Officer and CEO at CSM Practice. She has been pivotal in shaping customer success methodologies and best practices, and she has been featured as a speaker at conferences, customer success publication, and has been consistently voted customer success influencer for the past 7 years. I always see her on my timeline. So you are very welcome to our podcast, Irit, and thank you for joining us today. Would you like to share a little bit about yourself with the audience?
Sure. So I've been in the business of customer success since 2013. Started getting involved with that after joining Gainsight, one of the leading customer success consulting platform in the world.
Right.
And must have interviewed close to 200 executives back in the day just to set up and begin these transformational in our business community around customer success.
Right.
And after that, I went back to what I do best, which is consulting. And today I have my own business, CSM Practice, where we work with companies, SaaS services and on-premise customers, companies that are mid-market or enterprise or very high growth startups that needs the ability to scale and optimize their customer success practice
Right.
in a manner that is aligned with best practices to avoid as many mistakes as possible, because every mistake in that stage is very, very costly.
That's
And
absolute.
right, and one of the pillars in customer success is obviously doing customer onboarding well. So I'm
Right.
excited to talk about this.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. Thank you for your introduction, Erin. So, Erin, before we start, I just want to know, how did you get into customer success? So, because I wanted to know actually why I asked this question. Why I was really curious that I like it took time for me to realize that I can become a good product manager. I was 7 years into customer support, and then I thought, okay, now let's try something else, right? So, in that
Mm.
sense, once you started with Gainsight, did you have this in mind that you wanted to join customer success?
Okay, listen, when I joined Gainsight, there was no such thing as customer success. Gainsight started the customer
Seriously.
success category. So when I joined,
There was no such thing at that time.
yeah, I mean, I knew the founder, Jim Eberlin. I gave him a
Right.
call and I worked with him in a different company. And I said, I just had a call with someone else and we were talking praises about you and how fun it was when you were in the company still. And now you have this new startup. How is it going? He says, well, I'm just getting another round of funding. You should
Okay.
come speak to our new CEO, Nick Merida. And that's how I got into customer
Oh,
success.
so you guys actually created the category, right?
Correct. I was one of the few people that actually worked very diligently to create the category, initially as part of the Gainsight team, and then afterwards as a consultant. We worked very hard in combination with and partnership with Gainsight to
Right.
really educate the community around what customer success is,
Is
doing the market research and speaking at different events and creating collateral and other blogs and YouTube videos, that I have
right.
to really educate everybody around what we've learned and what are best practices.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to know, Irid. Like you guys are the starting point of customer success. This is so good to know. Yeah. Thanks a lot for this. And okay, so once you were defining this category, like when did you think that this role would come into the customer life cycle? Like, at which stage do you think that this role would be perfect to come in?
Yeah, listen, I mean, we have a lot of learning in the last 6, 7 years since this new methodology started. And what
Right.
we're seeing is that the earlier you bring in the role, the better. So some would think, yeah, during customer onboarding, but the fact is that if we can have some involvement even before the deal is closed, just so we can
Okay.
align expectations with
Mm-hmm.
the customer around what is customer success and what can they expect during the onboarding phase, or what do we need from them during the
Right.
onboarding phase, then we can set them up for success a lot better.
Okay, so if you would say kind of like once the sales have started pitching, it's kind of like a pre-sales time when you should get involved, a customer success person,
Yeah, pre-onboarding.
pre-onboarding. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's really nice, and actually that helps, right? Once you are involved during the sales cycle, the sales to success handoff is also easy, right? Because you're already involved.
Correct. Even though the involvement is typically just very minimal, you would be
Okay,
maybe introduced to the customer in one meeting. But yeah, I mean, you will have a little bit more involvement. And listen, this is only applicable when you have very large deals or
right,
significant deals. You're not going to do that for every account or for every deal that's going to be closed.
right.
But in an ideal scenario, that's what you would do.
That's
And
what
when
you
you
would
talk
like.
about mid-market or very small accounts, you need to figure out how to do it in a more agile manner. So a lot of times we do bank on this process called sales handoff. And so
Right,
that could take place if it's like high touch accounts or mid-market even, we might have a quick handoff between sales and customer success by having them have a meeting. But
right.
ideally, there's some sort of a form that's being filled out either by the salesperson
Yes.
or by the customer if it was complete self-service.
Okay, I got it. And why do you think like you mentioned about pre-onboarding, it's important, but not always you can do that, right? Not in small deals. You can only do it in the large deals, like you mentioned. So, and in the sense, why once we sell something to our customer, why do you think customer onboarding is so important?
Yeah, actually, there's statistical analysis around that. We know for a fact that customers that don't have a successful onboarding process, about 30% of them do not renew in year one. We also know that the
Seriously? Okay,
average SaaS company takes about 2 years to recover the cost of acquisition.
right. That's for
So
sure.
essentially, if you don't nail the onboarding experience, there's a 30% that not only you will not recover the cost of acquiring a customer, but you will actually bleed and lose money on that account.
Okay, so and you like there was any use case like or any kind of scenario that happened with you, Irit, as well? Like it must have happened with you at least once you realized that customer onboarding is important.
Oh, like a personal story? Yeah, actually,
There is one.
there's always one. And I think you learn from them, right? On like how you can
Absolutely.
improve. Um, so we at CSM Practice actually, we eat our own dog food, and we try to do the best onboarding experience for our customers.
Right.
And so we had this customer, and in the executive's mind, we were going to come in and the first kickoff meeting, we were going to jazz everybody up around what an awesome project this is going to be because they're going to have this awesome customer success program at the end of it.
Right.
And we were still approaching it as like, all right, it's a kickoff. We need to align expectations and who's going to do what, when, right? What's the scope?
Right.
Traditional kickoff. And so that misalignment in expectations really resonated that there should be like even a smaller, even the kickoff needs to be perfectly done. Because
Okay.
this is where the moment where you really can create an enrollment conversation with all the resources that never participated in the sales process. They don't even know
No,
why
you.
we're doing
Hmm.
this project.
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
And this
hmm, hmm.
highlights it's not just what you do, it's
Right.
how you do it. And can you align with the executive sponsor before you do the kickoff and to
Okay.
what kind of kickoff they want? Is it something that's important? If this is what you're going to do, you're going to leverage the kickoff as an enrollment conversation. Who
Right.
else should be there? And so getting ready for something is really important, and let alone a kickoff call. So, yeah.
No, that's important. I never actually thought about it this way that if you get an alignment, so that's why I'm loving this. When you get an alignment with the executive sponsor, you would know that who are the people coming in from there, what are their expectations, right? And so that you can plan a kickoff accordingly, right?
Correct.
So
So
that
it really showcases the steps, how many steps you need, especially for high touch customers. This is a very strategic project, obviously. The ones that we do
right,
are always very strategic, very important,
right.
very high value, right? So when you have these kind, let's say you're a SaaS company and you have a
Okay.
strategic account, you
Mm-hmm.
not only want to have a good sales handoff from the sales team, but you also want to have like a welcome intro call with your
Uh-huh.
executive sponsor to just align on expectation. What's important for them? Who should be
Okay.
involved? What should you know about them? And
Right.
then set up the formal kickoff call with everybody you need.
Okay, so that means a salesperson. So then exactly like you said, if you are involved a little bit in the pre-onboarding for High Touch SaaS, then you have a kind of like a bonding with the person, and then you can ask these questions that how you want the kickoff to be, right?
Yeah, you probably won't ask that during the sales call, but that pre-onboarding call before the sales deal is closed is really
Okay,
your moment to pitch why should they invest in customer success in their relationship, if not even pay the fees if you're charging for it, but
right,
also align expectation on the onboarding. Really help them understand what the level of resources are. What do your top customers do during onboarding? To cultivate that customer accountability that you need to create
right.
a good onboard. But I don't know that I would get into the nitty gritty of
That's okay.
different types of kicker. Like, I don't know that I would do that, during sales process. But
Right,
definitely after, when they close, you kind of want to establish that rapport and just make sure that you tap in on all the risks in onboarding and
right.
touch on all the advice that you can give them so that they can best prepare for it.
Okay. And if I talk about what are the best practices of onboarding, one you already mentioned that get a pre-alignment, then it's better, right? What else would you like to add?
Okay, so after you did the sales handoff, you did a welcome call. This is where, during the welcome call, this is where you align on the resources and
Right.
timing and uncover any kind of potential risks to the onboarding process. I want to also highlight if you're on premise or you're a very large enterprise that has some cloud solutions and you're not a startup, typically what would
Mm-hmm.
happen is that you will have a separate team that does implementations
Right.
versus the onboarding process, and you start splitting the onboarding, the implementation into onboarding and implementation.
Right.
The implementation process would be owned by your technical consulting team or professional services, as many call
Okay.
them,
Mm-hmm.
but still the CSM has a role in onboarding. So from a CSM's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
after they did the welcome call and identify what we call the governance model,
Right.
who is the executive, who's the business lead, who should be involved during the technical implementation, what kind of integrations do they need, all the, just check in all the boxes.
Right.
Then there's the kickoff call with the implementation team. Many times the CSM does the implementation if it's a small startup
Also.
or a
Right.
simple SaaS solution.
Right.
So in that case, they will also hold a more formal kickoff call.
Right.
What I've seen lately, I've actually witnessed one of Strike Deck's kickoff calls with one of my clients, and
Okay.
they actually prepared a whole success plan for that customer that they introduced during the kickoff call that I thought was really fascinating. Like the
Okay.
level of due diligence that they did before even meeting with the client formally, like with the entire team for the first time, was very impressive.
Okay.
And I would encourage everybody to do that even before the first kickoff.
And what
Another,
are the points that you would take from that kickoff that you loved?
yeah, I love the fact that they showcased, listen, Mr. Customer, we did our due diligence. This is what we know about you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the core points that are related to this implementation. That
Right.
we believe this is what you shared with the sales rep in terms of outcomes that you want. Like there's different segments in there that really showcases, hey, we did our homework and we know you, Mr. Customer.
This is nice. Like, and the customer would have appreciated it.
Who wouldn't? If you went to the doctor and they kind of like, yeah, I went through your history. I see you had this, and it's like, all right, this doctor actually cares, right? They actually
Yeah.
made some effort. So there's no, nobody doesn't like people to really be interested in them. And
Interested. Yeah.
certainly it saves a lot of headache for, they just spend months maybe with your sales rep explaining them about the business. They don't
Right.
want to re-explain it.
Pain
And
again.
so
Eh?
it's kind of nice to have someone saying, "Hey, I know your business. This is what I
Right.
know. Correct me if I misunderstood something.
Right.
Let's have a discussion around that."
Yeah. And so that's a really, really good first impression. And also now, if once we talk about customer experience here, that is the best thing anyone could do, right? Because we talk about normally call centers, right? When the calls are going from one agent to another and they don't know anything about you, right? And how frustrated we get. And now we are talking about a B2B company, a huge business, and they are doing it so due diligence, which will take a month. So that
Yes.
is impressive, Irit. Yeah, that is really
Yes.
impressive.
Isn't
So
it? Yeah.
yeah. So we discussed about okay. So first question I came from what you were talking about. You told me a lot of things. Have you created a checklist like that I need to do this for customer onboarding?
Personally, I don't have one that I have like you can download from our website. That's not a bad idea though. I do have a few blogs on there and I created a bunch of videos around how to do customer onboarding. So you can check them out on youtube.com/CSM Practice or
Done.
go to my website.
That's awesome. So once I'll post this podcast, I'll put those links there, which you just
Yeah,
mentioned. Okay,
awesome.
thanks a lot. And we also came into the topic about separating onboarding and implementation, right? So
Mm,
I'll ask a little bit more because once we started, Irit, we had only one person like for customer success. Now there are two, three, but there is still as we have not grown that much till now. We have around 50, 60 customers. So once we are growing, I'm thinking of separating these two roles, right? So currently there are people who are a little bit technical as well, who are a part of implementation properly, but they also do onboarding, like customer onboarding. They are the one who are going like a customer success, making a customer success plan for them, and also doing the implementation. But once
yeah.
we grow, I would want to understand from you that how I can separate completely both of them. That what exactly would be the role of a CSM who does the onboarding, what role he has in onboarding, and what is the role of the implementation person in the, how can I separate that?
So the CSM role, if you already had an implementation team, they would be doing the kickoff, right? The welcome, the intro call, the welcome call, and then feed that information back to the professional services, whatever they found, identify the governance model,
Right.
create a success plan. So
Okay.
identify what are the business outcomes that they want to achieve, have that discussion with them. And
Mm-hmm.
then once the technical implementation phase starts, and that could take anywhere between 2 weeks to, I don't know, some take years, right? If it's like a very complex
Yes,
project.
it
Oh
does.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's actually, it actually happens, like very
Right.
robust. Let's say there's some companies that have products or technologies that
Right.
OEM into a different one. And so they're really hijacked into this other company's innovation development project. And so if
Right.
that takes 5 years to develop, that's how long it's going to take. And so what would be the CSM's role in that is to continuously check in with the client. And that means
Okay.
that, attach themselves to existing meetings that potentially the consulting or the professional services team
True.
does with the
Mm-hmm.
client so that they have the ear on it. If the
Right.
partner implements, they should connect with the partner every once in a while just to see how things go, or maybe attend a meeting that the partner does with the client during onboarding, just
Okay.
so that they have a sense of what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly, if they think that something is stuck, the onboarding is stuck, they could unstuck it. Because sometimes
Okay.
things fall between the chairs. There could be a point, sort of like an escalation, not a technical
Right.
escalation, but highlight that there's a risk here and moving on. And so that's really what we're looking to do. In addition, they could make recommendations for training or
Okay.
knowledge-based articles that they can recommend the client to read if they really know
Okay.
what they're trying to achieve. And so they become sort of like the Robin to the professional services Batman in that process.
Okay. And in those cases, like once the implementation is a long one, like you mentioned, maybe 6 months or an year,
Mm.
not 5 years, if it's around 6 months and an year,
Yeah.
does who takes the feedback from the customers? Is it the CSM or the implementation person in that case when there are both of them involved?
Look at the if the implementation team takes the feedback, which I think they should at the end of the implementation phase.
Right. Right.
They should definitely take feedback. Every team should take feedback on any significant engagement they have with the customer.
Right.
Like at the end, did we do the right thing? Was this helpful?
Right.
And then I think that the CSM can take feedback. And so as the implementation team really works with the technical administration team or the IT team,
On their
then the
side.
CSM
Hmm.
can continuously develop the relationship with the executive management, the decision maker, and keep that channel open. And so even for my projects,
Mm-hmm.
I pre-schedule meetings with the executive decision makers throughout my implementation project of
Right.
customer success strategy project,
Right.
right? And so we develop the strategy and we work with the business leads, but I do want to provide feedback to the executive team. What are the risks I'm seeing in this project? What are the opportunities I see in this project? And then I want to hear from
Okay.
them. What did bubble up from your team? Did you hear anything? Should we change
Okay.
anything? So it gives us another layer of feedback that we otherwise won't hear. And listen, people rely on questionnaires all the time because they know you're going to read them. And so they don't really want to offend you. But by having a bifurcated channel, having the
Right.
implementation team deal with the tactical team, while the CSM continuously work with like a layer above,
Right.
I think that can really generate some mechanism of, getting feedback that you would otherwise not hear.
Not here. Because they might not be able to say this directly to the implementation person, right? Which they would
Correct.
they would share with you. That's
Exactly. It's easier to, they
hmm.
might even share with their managers. And if the implementation manager connects with, or the CSM connects with the decision maker, then we all of a sudden hear things that the tactical team bubbled up to their customer manager, and the
Right.
customer manager then can share with our manager.
Got
That's
it.
that's really where the gist of it happens.
Okay, so that really helps, that how we can put CSM as a above layer, and rather than, yeah, and so that a person who customer can share his thoughts with, that is the person that who can open
Exactly.
up with,
The
right?
escalation, sort of like yeah. So they're also outside of the implementation team,
Right.
right? So it just gives the customer, I can talk, they feel more comfortable talking to the CSM because on feedback or when things go wrong, because it's not really him or her that's
Doing it.
responsible for the technical implementation.
Got it. Got it. So that makes sense. Okay, so we talked about high touch SaaS now. A little bit about low touch SaaS, because I have a question in mind. How do you separate customer onboarding in a low touch SaaS and a high touch SaaS? So you told us about high touch SaaS. How about low touch SaaS?
Yeah. So the onboarding for low tech is mostly, when you really do a self-serve, true digital touch engagement,
Right.
most of the time you will go from freemium to premium.
Right.
So
Right.
those first 2 weeks or 1 week of trial, this is where you need to put all your resources in a digital experience. Find out what is most important for this customer so that you can nurture them with email campaigns and pop-up messages that would be relevant to the use case that they are trying to do, and
Okay.
hope that you get them to stick so that they do enough to say, all right, either I see the vision, okay, I think this would work.
Mm-hmm.
And so their awareness of the value is big enough that they would subscribe and eventually implement, or
Right.
they would actually put the efforts to implement very quickly. So
Right.
I see a couple of things happen there. Many companies that have a self-service, even though it's supposed to be completely tech touch and no
Right.
human intervention, they have a way to kind of ask the person as they sign in for the first time, how big is your team, to assess the level of opportunity
Okay.
and give them some, a few use cases that are the most popular based on probably some customer interviews that they've done,
Mm-hmm.
and select which one would be most like, why are you buying our software, right? And then
Right.
have them select the ones that are relevant. If we can understand that, two things can happen. One, we can determine if we want to give that customer a low touch or
High
a
touch.
complete tech touch.
That's a
With
good
a
idea.
complete tech
Mm-hmm.
touch, we know that the churn rate is higher, period. There's nothing
Right.
you can do about it.
Right.
But with a low touch, meaning there's some personal intervention, you can decide that those that have X number of employees or more, you're actually going to assign a CSM, and they're going to try and schedule a call with that customer to help with the onboarding experience.
Okay.
Not everybody's going to call, maybe it's not the right time,
Right.
but at least it's another service that you can offer. And I just want to double click on it because for low touch SaaS, it's really critical to understand not only the size of the customer, but the use case, and make sure that you amplify the experience with digital points that are relevant and
Right.
significant to the customer.
Right. So you are trying to say, once we take, so let's suppose a company has two personas that they want to go after. So one is, for example, a customer success guy, and one is a product manager. Both of them will have a different use cases, right? So you are first interview them and understand the use case that they have. And then once they sign up, you ask them what they are. They are a product manager or a CSM person, right? When they are already signing up for free or for a freemium, right? And then you ask them the use case. And once to ask them the use case, you tell them on those emails, onboarding emails, you send them only those things which are relevant to them, not to like everyone. That's what you're trying to say,
Correct.
right?
I mean, how many of us signed up for something and then they got emails that are completely irrelevant?
Absolutely. So this
And
makes
it's so
complete sense.
annoying. Like,
Mhm.
why are you? It's like, really, why are you sending me this?
Why are you
Not really.
sending?
It's almost spam at this point. You broke that relationship you're supposed to be generating in these
Right,
critical.
right. And is it okay? Like sometimes what I have seen once you start, when you're a complete new startup and people don't know much about you, if you ask these questions in the starting, people tend to just, okay, I don't want to answer these questions. Let me just cross it and go away. That also happens, right?
That also happens. You can't force people to not even lie, right? So they can lie, they can skip. But here's what happens. If they do, even if they lie, okay? Let's say they tell you the persona, they tell you how many team members, they lied on both, but then you showed them about 5 use cases that match this size of company and
Hmm,
this type of persona.
right.
Even if they don't do anything, you're sort of like opening the buffet for additional ideas that they might have not considered
Considered.
your application for. And at
Right.
that moment, within a second, even if they don't do anything, you already increased the the perceived value of your
Right.
solution.
No, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal this one, Irit. I'm definitely going to steal this one. And so you already mentioned, so involvement of CSM in this case would be if they mention the company size, then you assign a CSM to it and try to schedule a call so that they can get onboarding. And if you can help them with onboarding, most of the time they'll prefer your platform. That's what happens, right?
Most of the time. Yes.
Yeah. So that's
I
why
mean,
you want to.
granted,
Mhm.
I just signed up for two competitive solutions because
Right.
I needed a very simple solution for a very simple problem.
Okay.
And they both of them had it as an add-on feature. And one of them was much more robust than the other,
Right.
but they had all these bells and whistles that I didn't need. So of course I went with the one that had the easier UI, less complex solution, cheaper, because I just needed to do one use
One
case out
thing.
of the 20 that they offered.
Right.
But the other one actually did send me an email and said, hey, would you like to meet with our CSM so that they can help you onboard? And but at that point, I already made a decision. So not just because you offer a CSM, someone will actually take you on. They might have
Right.
made the decision at that point, and there's nothing really that you can do. They kind of like signed up to see what the look and feel is like, whether
Right.
this might be a good fit for them.
Right.
But if they are interested
Mm-hmm.
by having the CSM attached, you
Right.
can have a better onboarding experience, and that is really what's important here.
What's important? Okay, I completely understand now. And in that case, only last question, the kind of emails that, because CSM generally product managers take interviews with people, but if you assign a CSM, the CSMs do as well, and they get to know the use cases. Do CSM ever help out in like creating those use case studies or help articles that can be sent in those emails? Does that happen?
So important. Yeah, what you just mentioned is so important. Like having the CSM as a point of like a listening post
Right.
for the product team to say, hey, this is what we're hearing from the field. And this is
Right.
another group that's constantly in touch with customers. And they
Right.
have much more bandwidth to listen to customers than product will ever have. And so
Absolutely.
creating that, closing that loop, that feedback loop is so
Right.
important if the company puts it as a priority to
Right.
be customer centric, not just in their customer success initiatives, but also in their product roadmap, which
Right.
will ultimately lead to market dominance. Because
Got it.
the closer you are to what the customer wants,
Right.
um,
Absolutely. Then it's
win the race.
better. Yeah. And I will not jump to the product roadmap thing about CSM. I will talk about that later with you. Now, so I think it's clear now about Lotus and the involvement of a CSM. Now let's come back to the topic that we had for High Touch. We were talking about handoff, right? And handoff has already always been talked about how to make sales to customer success handoff successful. So what are your tips on that?
Look, salespeople don't want to fill out a sales handoff form. They don't want to spend any time on the deal after the deal is closed. So, I mean, that's the truth, right?
Right,
You're
that's
paid
the
on
truth.
quota, and once the deal is closed, why should you really be busy with all of that?
Right.
There's a few things that I've seen companies do to sort of fix that, and
Okay.
encourage the salesperson to actually do the sales handoff.
Right.
So many of them, they tie the commission or the compensation based on how many actually renewed after year one.
Oh, that's a
They
really
either get a
interesting point.
spiff, they either get a spiff or a bonus, or they don't get the commission until a year pass, or some of it they will get as a commission after year one pass.
Okay.
Now they are a little bit more motivated to make sure that the onboarding is successful, because there's
Right.
just too many cases where they're either being oversold. So it's not even the sales handoff that's being, without having any incentive
Right.
to include year one success. They
Right.
might even oversold a customer, not document anything related to outcomes.
Right.
They wouldn't care about expansion selling. So let's say they talked to a
Mm-hmm.
customer and they had, I don't know, three different things that they wanted to sell them, but just to get started, they sold them something small to get the
Right.
budget to get the client in. But there were two more things that they thought would be very applicable
Very.
for this
Mm-hmm.
customer. They don't even document it anywhere. Why? Because they don't necessarily being compensated for expansion selling. That's
Mm.
a different group, potentially the customer success managers. So listen, all these things are being solved in the same manner. You need to
Right.
incentivize the sales team to actually do that. So you can either do it with a compensation plan
Right.
or MBOs, or some companies physically, like technically, you cannot mark a deal closed won until you finish the questionnaire, that sales
Right.
handoff questionnaire. You actually embed it in Salesforce or I don't know, HubSpot, and you
Yeah.
need
Whatever
to
CRM we
finish.
use. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, it's like required form to fill out so that you can close the deal, so that you could have it being considered for commissions.
Right. But I think that's a very valid point in the sense as well, that if we think about just the sales team, right? They are judged on how many deals they get, right? How much revenue they get. They're never judged on how successful the handoff was or where the customer renewed it the next time, right? If their performance was based on that as well, that will definitely motivate them, right? Because it will be a part of their job. Currently it's not a part of their job. That's why they don't want to do it. They want to focus on something else, right? Bringing more deals, right? Because that is what the CEO has given them. So that's a good point. Like, so this is like a company culture, not, I would say, kind of like a best practices for a company culture with High Touch SaaS, that the salesperson should also be responsible for a renewal next year, right? So if
Or have their commission pending, or
pending.
some of their bonus pending, how many deals they brought that
Right.
were actually renewing in year one. I'm not suggesting you will
Hmm.
hold the commission for the whole year,
Yeah,
or
but
the
some
day,
part of it. Hmm.
but you know.
Yeah, I get it. And okay, so now we understand how the culture should be. How about what kind of questionnaires that you generally, as a CSM, you ask the sales team to fill up? What are those questions?
Yeah, besides just the regular attributes, a lot of times we see, a questionnaire trying or attempting to score the customer for health,
Okay,
meaning, what is the probability of actually being successful with our company? And then some qualitative questions around, are there inherent risks in this account? Have we identified the governance model, meaning who's the decision maker?
right,
Who do we need to work with during the implementation phase? All of these
right.
key stakeholders at the client. What other products did you want to sell them,
Okay,
or think that they should be buying that we haven't sold at this moment? Yeah,
okay.
so those are the kind of questions. Listen, obviously, one big question that we don't really talk about a lot is, can we define what is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the first outcome that we're going to deliver?
Yeah, that's most important.
That's the most important thing, right?
Right.
Sometimes this is being discussed with the sales rep during the sales cycle, but not always.
Okay.
So if it was, we kind of want them to identify it in the form. But even
Okay.
then, the CSM should really ask themselves, is this the right outcome to
Outcome.
deliver as first outcome? There's
Okay.
different types of outcomes. There's outcomes
Right.
that are very easy to implement, that we
Right.
call like quick wins or home runs, where it's a low level of effort to achieve, but
Right.
high impact or even low impact, something that's like
Yes.
a quick win, quick
Right.
gratification.
Mm.
And then there's the nightmare where it's like a big bang approach where you need to put a lot of efforts. And it's not until months before you see any
Any
kind of value
value.
to the
Hmm.
client.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
So if you can navigate the conversation with the customer, let's say they have 1,000 locations, they need to aggregate all of that. Can you kind of socialize to say, hey, why don't we start with a portion of your locations
Right.
so we can bring some of it in, set it up for some, it's easier to test. And once we get the proof of concept, paid, of course, like phase one, then we
Right.
can move you to migrate all of the locations. So that's one
Okay. Think
that
that.
identify what are those? Can we create a list
Hmm.
of outcomes that are less effort and are easy to achieve, but give us some sort of a low or high impact for the
High
customer?
impact. Yeah. So that it looks like a win to the customer as well, that they made a right decision, right?
Correct. So that's kind of like the list of outcomes we want to share with the customer and have them pick from those. And anytime they deviate from that list, we can kind of like re-navigate them back to this list. Make
Okay.
sure that they pick something that they can see a quick win or, at least within a few months, but it's going to be a high impact.
Right.
But even from there, you can even continue the conversation. That's something that I like to do. I used to
Right.
implement systems a lot
Mm-hmm.
back in the day.
Gain
And
cycles. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and even in then, I would say, okay, what is the change management that would be required internally?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're introducing a new technology and you
Right.
can attach it. The first thing that you can attach it to could be either a new process or an
Right.
existing one.
Right.
So if you implement it for an existing process, you're only changing one thing, which is the technology. I'm already used, I know the process as an end user.
Right.
I'm just going to do it better with this technology. So it's going to take me less time. I'm fully motivated to try this. I already know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just going
Right.
to do it something new. So I only need to learn the technology, have less resistance to
Right.
try this new thing. A lot of mistakes that clients actually do
Mm.
is they're trying to not only introduce the new technology, but also introduce a bunch of new processes that the company never had
Never
before.
had. Okay.
And then you're getting to a very high resistance to
Mm.
change. And you lower your chances for adoption. And this is actually a risk to the decision maker, the
Right.
business leads who are actually highly motivated in getting this new technology in. Listen, they acquire new software to be
Right.
successful, to solve some sort of a problem.
Right.
Nobody wants to dedicate weeks or months or even days or hours to not get the outcome that they want. So
One.
they definitely
Right.
are motivated at this point. Can we, as customer success managers, help them navigate to the right decision so that their team will adopt quickly? That is the
Yes.
question.
Because whenever we talk about a new technology, there is a change, right? Some people were habitual of doing something in Excel, and then you come with a platform that removes everything from that. But you need some time to learn it, right? So there's always this kind of motivation which is required, because change take times. Even when people were like, once we started the company, we were working on Excels for product management tasks, that what are the user stories, and everything was done on Excel. And once we moved to Jira, it took time.
Mhm.
It literally took time for people to move that. So if a CSM can take a part in that role as well, that helps the customers understand that how easy we can do it, then it would be brilliant. But that would that would make you a great success manager anyways, right? If you could help customer do that, because it's difficult. It's not that
It's
easy.
very difficult. And I would say, management has a lot of say in how successful a customer success manager could be. I
Right.
think it's up to us in the leadership position to actually create that list of what are the possible or recommended first operation, first outcome that we should offer customers. And from that, give them guidelines on how to navigate the conversation to choose the right
Right.
one for the client. Can we de-scope sometimes to
Right.
create multi-phased approach so that the customer can address change management
Okay.
challenges?
Okay, I understand. And so once we so in the sales process, we at first try to understand in the success handoff that, okay, what are the outcomes? And then we noted out these outcomes, and then we noted out these risks as well for change, like you mentioned. And then once we go on the kickoff call with them, we take these points with them, like these are the outcomes that we are going to achieve, and these are the risks. Is everything discussed there on the first call?
I think, yeah, I would recommend it. I would say,
Okay,
all right, this is what we've heard that you wanted to do. This is
right,
everything that we can do. This is what we recommend based on what we've learned. This is what we recommend that you would do for, just the first outcome. It will help
right,
us get you some quick wins, high adoption.
right.
And then we know you want to do all these other things. So we'll do it in a multi-phased approach. So
Phases.
that would be for phase 2, phase 3, phase 4.
Okay. And so generally the first kickoff call that we have with the after the sales process is generally customer success person is the one who's leading it, or it's like sales starting it and then introducing CSM for sometimes. Is it like that as well?
So after the deal is closed, one,
Hmm.
the CSM has the intro call with the decision maker. I think that's a
Right.
point where they can even ask them about that too. But
Mm-hmm.
certainly during kickoff, you could have a discussion around, these are the outcomes, this is what we recommend, so that you can
Right.
really align on expectation. There's
Right.
no time that I would actually recommend having a separate call just about the outcomes that they want to achieve and really
Okay.
have a strategic discussion during the implementation process.
Okay. And during that part, in the kickoff call, now let's talk about the kickoff call when the first kickoff call where we're discussing the outcomes. What are all the things that you present there? So kind of like a customer success plan. It would be a success plan there, right? What we would present in that kickoff call. So what are the things that you would like to include in the success plan apart from outcomes, risk? What else?
No, so the outcomes and the risks is something that you typically do in a sales handoff.
Okay. So you don't speak with
Kickoff, you
them
would
about the
say,
customer. Mm-hmm.
no, I mean, you could, but it's not
Right.
something you necessarily have to have.
Right.
We would present the CSM to the entire team. We
Right.
would say who else would be involved in our end, their end. You could also, like I said, leverage it as a point of, enrolling them of why do they want to implement the solution and what kind
Right.
of, success stories did we have with the solution that might be relevant for them. You
Okay.
kind of want to touch breakdown, this is what you can expect in the next X number of periods until the implementation is over, and this is what's going to happen after. Really just set the stage. So people, processes, what systems you're going to use, timeline you're expecting.
Right.
Yeah.
So things like that. Okay. And if like you mentioned that in the success handoff we discuss about those outcomes and all, and once we decide on these outcomes in this first kickoff call, that we understand, okay, if we do these one or two outcomes with low effort, it would create a good impact for the customers. So you
Mhm.
definitely discuss them on the first kickoff call about that, right? That these are the things that we are going to do in the
For
starting.
very high touch customers, you can definitely try, depends on who's in the room.
Okay.
If the CSM feels like it would be better to discuss with just the executive decision maker first,
Okay.
then a separate call, they might want to do that. There's no like hard set rules like when you're going to talk about outcomes. I've seen it done really well during kickoff calls, like I
Okay.
mentioned that example. I don't think it's a bad idea to kind of share this is what we're thinking, the outcomes that you want to achieve and what you're going to get out of it, because it helps. Like I said, there's going to be some people during the kickoff call that had not been in the sales process, and
Right.
so this is our opportunity to kind of share, this is why your management team decided on this tool. So if there's any
Mm-hmm.
objections in anybody's mind, they can kind of like at least get on board of why this tool was
Why
selected.
this tool is used. Okay, I understand. And in during this process, in this kickoff call, generally, sales team is involved, or they should be involved or not. What do you suggest? Like just
Yeah,
being
I don't
there.
think there's
Yeah.
like a hard rule around this.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that the sales rep has to be on those calls.
Okay.
In companies where the sales rep actually owns renewals and expansion, definitely I would recommend it that they would
Okay.
be present, but I don't think it's necessary for them.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So let's suppose now the kickoff call is done and we have started the implementation. We would, of course, the CSM would be the person mostly giving the trainings to them as well, right? The product trainings, or like if it can be done, if it's not the implementation part. So a CSM does the training.
It depends on how small your company is.
Okay.
So if the company is very small, very young, they will do the support tickets, they will do the implementation, the onboarding, they will do the training. The bigger the company, the
Right.
more specialized roles you're going to have, period.
Right.
So
Okay.
it depends on your budget and how complex the tool is as well.
Right.
So it depends on the life cycle of the company and how much
Right.
budget it has to actually hire experts to do training. Training does take some expertise. And then
Absolutely.
how complex the solution is. If the solution is not very complex and the whole onboarding, it's a very low touch model, I don't
Right.
see a reason why the CSM can't do the training. However,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
here's the pitfall. If it's supposed to be a higher touch model and the
Right.
CSM starts doing training and technical implementations, all of a sudden they're perceived as a technical SME. SME stands
Mm,
for subject matter, right?
right.
So now they're not a strategic person,
Right. I got your
tactical
point.
product expert person.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
really diminish their position to really deal with the admin. And they're
Right.
going to be pinged for every question related to the product instead of support. So
Mm-hmm.
they're really starting to function as premium support. And
Support.
if they wanted to talk about outcomes and strategic decisions, it's going to be very hard for them to play both
Mm,
roles.
I understand. So there is a time once the company grows to a point where you separate these roles completely, so that even the customer understands that how these roles are different, right? Otherwise, they'll think about that the person who will give support to me any time, right? And then they'll be chasing for every other support ticket. They'll chase that guy,
Support, onboarding question, billing question, anything question, they're gonna go for this person.
right?
So once you have the budget to separate, you kind of want to start doing that so you can really protect and have a trusted advisor relationship for
Right.
your accounts. It's very hard to do with a low touch model, by the way, almost
Right.
impossible.
Right.
But you could offer it to your strategic accounts within a lower touch. Like if it's a business where most accounts don't spend more than 5 figures, maybe
Right.
you would offer that to a handful of accounts that are
Mm-hmm.
more significant, or maybe you'd offer that to your partners if you have partners bringing you business.
Right.
But for a higher touch models, that's definitely the case.
I understand. So if like Garrett, you mentioned, if there is a complete low touch model for a company, right? So they are 99% of the time it's a completely self-service product, right? You still have CSM there, right? So the role of that CSM cannot be that strategic there. So how would we even need a CSM then?
Well, like I said, the CSM in a lower touch model does the onboarding for as many customers as they can.
Right.
You need to set up the threshold. If you have like, thousands a month, then you need to set up a threshold that you can find out during the survey.
Right.
And then once the onboarding, yeah, that's it. The CSM really kind of like moves out of the picture. They might, if you don't have an
Mm,
evergreen contract, they might do the renewals. They
right.
might do some expansion selling, but if you're going to go for a complete self-service type model, you definitely want to, double down on a very light, easy to use product
Right.
so that you could do everything in a digital experience.
Right. No, I get it. So I think in that time there's not need for many customer success managers, right? A few can manage a lot of accounts, right? So that's how it will happen in that case. Mhm.
Yeah, when you have a very low touch model, let's say 1 to 100 and above, 1 to 300, all the CSM does is addresses queries from customers on technical and product questions. And in
Right.
between, they do the renewal contracts.
Right.
They don't
I
really
get it.
have time to do anything else. It's a
Right.
very reactive role. They just service the account, but they don't really have the bandwidth to be super strategic with it,
No, I
unfortunately.
get your point. And okay, so now let's come back again to the High Touch SaaS. So the onboarding part is complete, the kickoff call is complete. We have started the implementation and everything. So then we can wrap this up with just the last question: when we should take feedback on onboarding.
Yeah, I think it's great to take the feedback at the end of the implementation phase.
Okay.
And then if you have any significant activities during the onboarding, I think you can have a feedback around that. Did that meeting add any value to you? So you could
Okay.
have some CSAT on support tickets or any kind of
Right.
significant went on site. You can ask for feedback as well, but definitely at the end of the
At the
implementation.
end of onboarding. And generally a CSM takes that part as well, taking that feedback, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would send a survey, or like I said, the CSM can actually have a conversation with the executive decision maker
Right.
and get some more feedback. So I think we discussed that
Okay.
earlier on in
Awesome. Okay, I think that does it. I think thank you so much, Irit. Yeah, I have learned a lot from you today. I was very curious about how you separate these roles in high touch, low touch. You completely nailed it. Thanks a lot for that. And it was really good to know that you were a part of building this customer success category. There was no category before you guys jumped in. So thanks,
No.
Sin. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and we loved having you here.
Yeah, I love being here. Tanuj, you're wonderful. Thank you so much for your questions. And this was a lovely discussion.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
so
many
much.
questions. Sorry.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for listening in. We'll be back again next week with another rocking CX thought leader. Till then, stay safe and good day. Bye, Erit. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Have a nice
everyone.
day.
Thank you, Tanuj.
Bye bye.